You recently posted a picture, a goat a day keeps the doctor away. आप सिर्फ मीट खाते हो all the time.
Yeah, absolutely correct. I was vegan for a short bit of a time and that was it.
We also have thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of cases of ulcerative colitis being reversed through a vegan plant-based diet.
So you cannot say only plant-based or only animal-based. Each human is very, very unique.
We all believe that fiber is all essential. I was on your side. I started questioning the fiber thing.
Animals are not a food group. Animals are sentient and emotional beings.
So are plants.
You cannot be spiritual when there is a dead animal in your plate. That's the basic concept.
Which scripture says this?
I don't understand. How do you make this? On what basis? Right? Vegans disproportionately in countries like Finland, in Europe, wherever these studies have come, vegans are disproportionately amongst the richest people in that society.
I think fruitarians are the equivalent of carnivores.
But they're not.
Fruitarians die, carnivores do die.
Yeah.
Oh, carnivores do die.
We've created this system where we view animals as products. We don't view them as individuals. We've given moral status to dogs and we treat a chicken like she's a product. But who has decided this stuff?
Right.
Like, would you eat a Labrador? Hi everyone, welcome to Kindness with Amy. I'm so excited to have you all here. Today is a very interesting and exciting format. Sometimes on social media and these podcasts, there's so much different information from different viewpoints and usually it's people with the same views talking about the same stuff, and obviously they all agree on the same shit. So I was like, let's just have a fun, respectful dialogue with very different viewpoints on the same table and talk about some common misconceptions and share ideas and hopefully learn a little bit from one another. So today I'm joined by Kuntal, who is an incredible mountaineer and vegan nutritionist, and I'm joined by Abhishek, Thavar, who happens to be my trainer, and he's also a vegan professional bodybuilder. Also joined by Mugdha, who is a nutritionist and healer, I believe, and also joined by Krish, i.e. Masala Labs, author and content creator, and Samar, who is an athlete and carnivore diet enthusiast. Thank you for joining me, everyone. So let's dive right in. I'm super interested in your diet, Samar. You recently posted a picture on your Instagram saying a goat a day keeps the doctor away. And I'm really curious about you being a carnivore diet. आप सिर्फ मीट खाते हो all the time, is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely correct. The way it started was actually I was vegan for a short bit of a time, you could say 6 months, and that was it. And due to the intensity of the workout that I was doing, I was actually playing badminton at that time, and I was like in a proper training camp. So at that time, when starting, because of all the reserves that I was having, like it was so light, so good at that moment. But like after a few months down the line, I could see my health really crashing. And at that point, I really had to like change something. And this came out like it comes out the same as life happens. Like it's just right around the corner and you turn and it's there. So I landed on this diet and I tried it and the results were absolutely fabulous. Like being very aware and conscious about what I eat. I think like apart from some very bad sucky days, I think I feel absolutely good about how aware I'm about my body. So that is how it started, and like people say it's extreme, and I understand everything around it. So looking forward to like have criticism over it and maybe tell my point of view about the whole diet.
I just, I'm curious as to, you tried it for a few months and you were feeling good. And then you mentioned that you kind of had like a crash, or you said, your health took a backseat. So like from what angle it took a backseat? What exactly happened that you had to literally take a 360-degree opposite, train? Like, right, there is, still a very balanced approach that you could have taken, but you took like literally a 360-degree opposite turn. So
no, I understand. So what happened was it was not a 360-degree turn. It took me almost 6 months to transition properly. So like I was vegan, I was having plant protein, I was supplementing properly, and then I decided like this is not working. Like there was a day that I explicitly remember. I was playing basketball, just going there, playing, jumping, and like I'm very athletic. I'll jump a lot. I try to jump very high, and I'm touching the rim, everything. I come back, and there's no incident that happened, and I could feel a sharp shooting pain in my leg, and all that I could do, I couldn't like it felt as if it was fractured. uh, with 4 to 5 hours I was just resting, and then by the evening I think I recovered a bit. That's when I was able to get normal function back again. So like 6 months down, I was still very dogmatic. I was like, I'll still do it, I'll still do it. And but somehow, like, due to some of my coaches saying that you need to incorporate this, and it became kind of that it was kind of the sport demanded it. So I had to add some eggs. And then over time, I had there was one more incident that happened. I got COVID, and I could see my dad recover faster than me. Like, I was doing this very good diet with all the vegetables, everything to the finest point. I had figured everything. But then my dad, who was not doing anything, he was like drinking twice a week, and he was back up after COVID after 3 days. So that's where I thought like something is off here. Like, I really need to look again, see, question my beliefs, and this is where I landed on like keto. And I did keto for like 1 month, and after that, like, carnivores is very easy because you just have to eliminate the veggies out of it. So it was like a transition. It was never like a complete 360. Like, as people think, because like I erupted and was like telling the truth about my truth about the diet. So people thought like maybe this is how I started, this is how it was, but it was never like that. Like, it was a very slow transition.
Can I ask a basic question? If you're not having any fiber in your diet, how long is this realistically going to last? Because after 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, will you physically be able to keep staying on a carnivore diet, do you think?
Fiber is a thing that a lot of people ask actually. And initially, when I started this, I was trying to read, and there were like a lot of studies and cohort studies, and they were saying like fiber is very beneficial, and all the role that fiber plays with your gut microbiome. But slowly, when you dive deeper, you actually see more of data that actually corroborates the paradigm that you're in. So my paradigm was like a complete shift. I was not doing any processed food, anything, and I shifted like a total 180-degree turn to the opposite side. At that point, like, initially it was not easy to understand, but then I saw studies where they were showing that zero fiber diets actually helped in constipation, IBS, resolving IBS, and all of that stuff. With that, also new studies, new podcasts that I was listening to, people were pointing out studies where the alpha diversity of the gut microbiome actually doesn't change with the fiber intake. So that is where I understood like the thing that I'm doing is different with the studies that other people are comparing with. Those are like studies with normal diets where they're eating some form of sugar, or maybe including that with some processed food. So this is like a different turn. That's why I think like the thing about fiber really doesn't apply here.
So I'd like to add to that, right? So if you have a well-functioning gut, like we do so many tests, we do advanced tests, we do like stool tests and everything. If you have a well-functioning gut, if enough butyrate is being produced in the gut itself, then that's the stuff your bacteria need to feed on. So you don't need to put in unnecessary fiber. In fact, what we've seen is with a lot of our IBS, IBD, ulcerative colitis patients also, removing fiber makes it easier for the gut. Because fiber in such cases becomes an irritant for the gut. Like, there's constantly something that's going in that has to be broken down. It's pushing through the gut. So for people who have gut dysfunction, reducing the amount of fiber really helps them until we resolve whatever's causing that. So it could be like a bad microbiome, it could be like not enough of the good guys, maybe they just need probiotics. But fiber necessarily doesn't always translate to good gut health. Some cases it can make gut health worse. There are cases of like, where so I'm not a carnivore proponent at all. In fact, I was plant-based for a couple of years. Kuntal and I shared the same stage. But there are cases, anecdotal for sure, where people with like autoimmune gut disorders have gone into remission once they went on a carnivore. And then everyone's like, oh, the carnivore diet is perfect. Like my gut issues have resolved. And when they try to add that plant food, then they have issues again. And that tells us that the issue isn't resolved. It's just that you went into like a safe boot mode where there was no fiber, nothing, no carbohydrates to digest at all, and your gut seemed to perform better. But fiber is not always essential. Like if you are carnivore and if you are able to metabolize stuff and like you're having your bowel movements without a struggle, it works.
Are you?
Yeah. I mean, so I would like to add some more things here. One thing was about the same study that I'm telling you. I have it here. So in that study, the thing was that the people on the high fiber, they had like 3 to 4 groups. One was like 0 fiber and one was like high fiber diet. So I'm like comparing the extremes because I'm an extremist. So the high fiber diet, they had an average bowel movement of 1 in 6.83 days, something like that. And the 0 fiber diet had 1 in 1 day. So we are often, what is happening is we are often confusing the term constipation. It is not actually, like people think like it's like when you eat a lot of fiber and that moves out, and we're thinking like the amount that is moving out, volume is the only thing.
Yeah.
In fact, it could be said the time duration or the time duration is also a proponent. And with that, if you're passing blood in your stool, all of that is also a factor. So we just look at one and we think that is constipation, but like it's a whole thing. And that really comes up when you go like in that same controlled trial, there was like the same thing happening, high fibers once in 6.83 days. So that really opened up.
And there's clinical reason why that could be happening. So I had one case which was like a hyperthyroid case where his thyroid was going like super fast and everything was fast, extremely lean, bowel movements multiple times a day. And he came to us saying, I have IBS, like I just like have to go all the time and it's really uncomfortable and awkward in meetings because like I don't know when the need would suddenly arise. And then, okay, we'll fix your IBS. And we saw it was hyperthyroidism. So we started working on the thyroid, but we put him on this safe boot mode, which is just steak and like no other no other plant material. And his need to go to the toilet came down dramatically. It just became once a day. And he was very happy. I'm like, no, like this is not the end. Like until we fix whatever's triggering that constant, the constant peristalsis in your bowel, we have to fix that first. So we work slowly on that. So constipation in a lot of cases is often a thyroid issue also. Like the frequent bowel movements is a thyroid issue. Constipation can be a thyroid issue. And if you don't work on that, whether you're plant-based or whether you're animal-based, you might still end up with the same situation. So people just look at like the diet as one thing that's affecting everything in the body, but there are so many nuances to every organ functioning like its most optimal level that sometimes we might, like miss the forest for the trees. Like we're just looking at one thing and they're not looking at the broader picture itself.
One more thing that I wanted to add, like you were saying anecdotally, like we have issues that were being resolved of the gut, but like it's documented properly, like Crohn's disease with the carnivore diet.
Yeah.
It's managed with the carnivore diet. So we had one with Crohn's disease and the other was, I guess, I think it was also about the gut.
Ulcerative colitis, we know it works well. But like people often say, oh, this is just one person's report.
Yeah, but it's not anecdotally then. Yeah.
Right. But on the other hand, we also have thousands and thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of cases of ulcerative colitis being reversed through a vegan plant-based diet. Okay, so that's also there. So it's not like carnivore is the only way to go. Plus, we have robust, like super robust data which looks at mortality rates across many years, where fiber has repeatedly shown to improve all-cause mortality, right? Which is what your question is. What about 5 years? What about 10 years? Right now, we have resolved your issues. I have seen carnivore forums, 12 days, I cannot go. 15 days, I cannot go. And then people are saying, eat more butter, eat more butter, eat more butter, right? Like eat sticks of butter, right? People are eating sticks of butter, screwing their LDL out of the glory, right? And causing, their entire CVD risk to go like, shoot up like, insane, right? So all of these things are happening. And with the fiber point, my point is that you needed to do an elimination and figure out what is causing that issue. Right? It is not thyroid. Sure, all of those things could be in play. But just an elimination diet could have helped you. Okay, maybe these are a couple of plant foods that are triggering you, and maybe if you just ate them in a slightly smaller, like quantity, or perhaps you just eliminated those, that could have helped. So I honestly, find this, concept that eliminating an entire food group out of your, plate, I think you are setting up yourself for a lot of long term. You are young, and I would I would really ask you to reconsider just introducing a little bit of fiber in your diet. We already know Paul Saladino, who wrote whatever book, stupid book that he wrote about carnivore. He's already facing so many issues for the last 2 years: cramps, heart palpitations, whole host of issues on a carnivore diet, right? He's like considered the godfather of the carnivore movement. He's already added fruits back to his diet, already added vegetables back to his diet, already, adding things like eggs back to his diet, right? So he was a vegan, went to carnivore, now, coming back and adding all the plant foods, going almost the middle way.
And that's the point, Kuntal. There is no, that's what I was talking about also. You cannot say only plant-based or only animal-based. Each human is very, very unique, and some humans do really well with more animal foods along with plant foods. Some humans do better with maybe larger degree of plant foods and some amount of animal food. But like you said, you can't just cut off all plant-based foods. Similarly, animal protein does play a significant role in human health. So cutting it off entirely, then we're just becoming dogmatic about either side.
Right.
I just want to like point out. So I think no one, at least for me, we all believe that fiber is all essential. I believed it wholeheartedly. I was on your side. I started questioning the fiber thing after the studies and after my whole experience. I was on your side, 100%. I was on your side, 25 years, I was on your side. I changed after that. And then I started to like really question, like, is fiber really necessary? Because before that, it was like, okay, fine, fiber hai. And I was adding fiber and I could really not see any benefits then as well. So what do you suggest that we should give up the now for the future as well? Because your point was epidemiological data states that 20 years down the line, fiber is very essential and it could harm us. But like right now, if I'm feeling very bad with all my fiber, like the same study
What
that I
I'm
showed,
saying is that you need to do an elimination diet. You don't need to eliminate all the fiber out of your life. What I'm saying is figure out what is causing you the issue. That is what you have not put in the effort to do it. So I think you need to, take a step back. Again, this is my personal opinion, right? And we all will, do what personally we want to do at the end of the day. So my thought process is that you are, stating 1 or 2 studies. I am looking at thousands of studies on the other hand, which have robust data, clearly indicating that fiber is going to improve all-cause mortality across the board with everything. So what I'm suggesting you is that just introduce a little bit of plant foods to your diet. See, do an elimination or do a reintroduction diet, thing where you are probably reintroducing some of the fibers. Maybe, stuff that you enjoy. Maybe an apple is, what you enjoy. Maybe, one of your favorite fruits that you enjoy. It may not have a high, like, for example, banana. Like people think banana is like this god fruit, it has tons of fiber. It doesn't. It has some fiber. It's pretty tasty. You may like it. See if you introduce it back and see if you enjoy it. And maybe, introduce some of it, slow and steadily. And I'm not going to, stand here and take a moral high ground and say, stop being a carnivore. I'm not going to do that. This is not the platform to do it. Neither, I am your friend or, I'm your like relative or someone who deeply cares for you, right? So I'm not, going to say any of those things here. But I would, at least ask you to reconsider reintroducing some fiber back into your diet and see how that goes.
But
Just
I would
a
like
little
to
bit.
reconsider the data that you're pointing out actually. Like
And
you're
thousands
pointing
of
out-
studies.
I agree.
All thousands of studies
We have seen
replicated
this.
across the world.
Can I complete my point?
Sure.
Like I've seen this countless of times. Like we see major confounders in these studies. Epidemiological data, 100%. We have seen it a lot of times. It is not consistent. It is
Not even
never consistent.
epidemiologic data. I'm talking about randomized control trials.
RCDs of fibers, but like this is also our RCD of fiber. that
Like
I'm
1,
telling you.
2. And opposite hundreds of
Are you
them.
telling me that it's a meta-analysis of fiber only?
I'm talking
And
about
with a diet that is on-
I'm talking about umbrella reviews of meta-analysis.
I would really love to see
I
that.
will
would
show
really
it.
love to
Yes.
see that.
Kuntal, there's another thing here. Okay, so I I started off my health journey because I had Hashimoto. Let me just complete.
Let me just first say, I'm not saying that go vegan to him.
No,
Right? I'm just asking him to reintroduce
So
a
when
little bit
when
of
we
fiber.
speak of trials, when we speak of data, we are conducting all of these on human beings. So I got sick in whatever 2017 and all, and discovered functional medicine, used an autoimmune protocol, which was meat and veggies and like good quality fat and everything. Felt really great, lost 37 kg. I was like, okay, good. Then I moved into like learning more about spirituality, and I hated the fact that I had to kill to eat. I mean, not that I was hunting, but like I had to take another life. So I went into that completely, like the thing of having to take another life, meat and all. I went into that rabbit hole. Same time, the whole food plant-based wave was washing over India. Game changers happened. I was like, let me look at this, and then the data.
But game changers were not whole foods
I know.
plant-based. Let's keep them to.
So the data just came, and like all the studies that you're speaking of, all that.
And by the way, Game Changers was not a great movie. So let's also.
I know. I'm just saying
Thank
the
God, bro.
propaganda machine had begun, and then there were a lot of summits and everything which I attended. And I was like, oh, like looks like this is gonna work. Keeps me like morally, ethically happy. Let me do this. So I did whole food plant-based for from 2018 December right until the beginning of 2020. That's like 2.5 years. And I felt very good about myself, like morally. But because I analyzed data so much, I could see consistently like every 6 months was a really good honeymoon phase. After that, the numbers started dropping. So my iron levels started dropping. My the protein levels, like however we analyze protein in the bloodstream, that started dropping. My recovery post-workout, I lift heavy. I do like 70, 80 kg dead weight. So everything started dropping. I was like, oh, so because iron is dropping, iron supplement. Because protein is dropping, protein shake. So I started doing all of that. And then there came a point of time where my plate was more supplements than food. Then I was like, this is not working. Went back to data, went back to all the studies. I'm like, oh, I need to add animal protein. Did that. Reduced plants, reduced supplements, added more animal protein. Amazing body. Like 2020 October, I think I had the fittest body ever. That lasted for a year. Then emotional trauma happened. Like I call it DDT of my life, Dukh trauma. So it doesn't then just get limited to the food you're eating, right? Health then becomes an outcome of the mental, emotional, and the spiritual layer. So studies are great, RCTs are great, the epidemiological studies are great, but then as a species, we are very different.
Correct. We are all n equal to 1 experiment. I totally agree with that. But at some point, we also have to make population level recommendations. Right? And so at a population level recommendation, I'm not going to say stop eating fiber. Right?
Yeah.
You're right, but at the same time, can I point out that at the population level, you shouldn't be saying don't eat eggs either. You should not be saying don't eat milk either, right? There's enough. The problem is that you're right. We're all n equal to 1. Everyone anecdotally has biases.
Right.
So the point is that no amount of epidemiological data is going to convince someone for whom a carnivore diet worked that they're going to eat, that they have to eat fiber, that an elimination diet would have been better for you. That's like what if, right? I mean, the other point is that if you're saying removing plant as one major food group, you could argue the same thing about animal foods as well, right? So the point is that somehow broadly being this somewhere plant forward omnivore in various spectrums seem to be the default state of human beings worldwide. Culturally, I mean, if you're like a Inuit, you're probably mostly carnivore, and then if you're somewhere in the South Asia, you're far more likely to be far more plant-heavy. Like the per capita consumption of animal protein in India is like ridiculously low. It's like about 7 kgs per year or something, right? So it's like pretty low, right? We are practically nearly, vegan and so on. So in that sense, I think the problem is that you could find someone like really jacked like him who's vegan, right? Who's gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, so on. But you could also find ridiculously unhealthy people who do extremely silly things like go on fruitarian diets.
Correct.
And have these B12 deficiencies. And so the problem is that at one level, she said it right? If that's what worked for you, right? For you to switch to something else and all right, I'm going to sit through all my problems, continue to eat fiber, and then painfully go through an elimination diet. For sure. I guess if you had advised him back then, and had you been his advisor, maybe you would have done that, right? And I think, not all of us want to always sort of do that. We go seek our own, wisdom and so on. So yes, on the face of it, it obviously seems extreme, but it's only as extreme as saying that I will not eat anything that comes out of an animal. And these are both extreme positions, right? But it works for people. For the people, it works fantastically. And for those it doesn't, I mean, they, they go into remission, they move out like she did, and so on, right? So, in my opinion, it's so hard to somehow defend our diets because we can find studies to justify literally anything.
Right.
Most people are not good at looking at quality of studies, looking at p-values, looking at inherent biases, or even if they do all of that, they may not be aware of other funding biases and all manner of other things that could happen even behind the scenes. So science is also, nutrition science, at least of food, is so notoriously tricky that I think in some sense it's no point being fundamentalist about it all. There is probably 10 parts to fix this problem. 10 parts to fix anyone's problem, right? I mean, yes, and it could be absolutely done in a purely plant-based way. It could also be done in some cases, clearly, by a no-plant way as well. So I don't know, that's just my open thoughts at least.
Can I then ask a
Yes.
question here? I feel that on an ethical level, firstly, I believe that we're behaviorally omnivorous, more aligned to herbivorous animals. We're certainly not carnivorous at all in structure. Biologically, we're simply not carnivorous, so it's insane to suggest that. But just on an ethical level, to me, right? I've been vegan now for 20 years, still flailing along just fine. And just on that very basic concept for me, I'm not talking about health, I'm not talking about environment, I'm not talking about all this stuff. I just feel that as humans, as moral and rational human beings, if we have the capacity to make a choice, and whether the choice is choosing to get our protein from hurting an animal versus choosing to get our protein from not hurting an animal, how can we ethically justify being good people if we're choosing to hurt an animal when we don't need to? That is my question, especially if we're then saying spirituality, this, that, whatever. I find it so hard to accept that someone can call themselves spiritual if they are giving someone money to put a knife in an innocent being's throat when it's not necessary.
I think that's a failure of imagination.
Can I just interrupt?
Yeah.
Just to add to your point and to rebut your point, I agree with majority of what you said, except the point that we have eliminated animals as a food group. And I disagree with that fundamentally because animals are not a food group. Animals are sentient and emotional beings with individual characters.
No, that's fine.
And if you're talking about plants, I will come to the plants point as well.
Okay.
They are sentient and emotional beings with individual characters.
Yes.
And they deserve to live as much as we do. As simple as that. And that is the reason why we do not want to consider animals food groups and eat animals. And so in my case, I am not eliminating anything. This is, what my diet is.
So
As simple as that.
it's not a health issue, right? It's an ethical issue.
Yeah,
Correct.
ethical.
So we pivoted from arguing health to now pivoting to ethics, right? So that's why, that's the point.
So there are-
Because your arguing about fiber was not about ethics, it was about health.
Yeah.
So my point about
Because we were at that point
was
talking
Exactly.
about health.
Right.
Correct.
So therefore,
I
my
brought
point
up
was
ethics.
naturally
Correct.
about health and
Correct.
not about ethics, right?
So there are
And I'd like to address the ethical point. So we speak about, compassion for other animals and loving them. We forget that we are the most divine as well. And if I am allowing my body to break down because I love another animal so much that goat's life is more important than my life, I think I'm doing a disservice to my own existence. So when we speak of self-love, and why did I choose? I said I went down the whole food plant-based path because I didn't like the idea of killing. Then I saw what that was doing, that ideology, what it was doing to my body, and my body was breaking down, and I was not cool with that. Not at all. I really think what I do with my life force, what I do with my mind, what I do with my existence is truly more important than what one goat can do. And therefore, I will make that choice out of a full conscious awareness that I am a spiritual being. There is the divine within me. This is what it takes to maintain my body, because genetically, I've done all these studies, and I cannot absorb iron from plants. I just can't. My genes are fucked. I have major glutathione issues, so I need the sulfur compounds that come from meat. I need that to live well. Therefore, I choose myself. And With that, I put an end to that debate: is a plant a sentient being or is animals are sentient? So are plants. An animal feels horrible when it is killed. I do not doubt that at all. But I will choose to eat what is right for my body because I really value my existence more than I would value a goat's or a fish or a prawn's existence. That is where I come from.
And I will add to what she says, right? So, barring the individual sort of level, right? I think there's a failure of imagination in saying that you simply cannot understand how somebody who eats animals can exhibit kindness or can, especially when they have a choice and so on, right? I don't think food works that way, right? Because it's also a limited understanding of why we domesticated these herbivorous animals in the first place. These are not wild animals.
Yeah.
They could not survive without the help of human beings.
Correct.
India has like 1/3 of the world's cattle, right?
We breed them.
And we breed them. Absolutely, we breed them. And if you do not breed them, they will breed too, right? So it's not like that. So the point is that these are things that happen alongside agricultural civilizations, right? I mean, you go back 5,000 or 6,000 years, or even 10,000 years. These were, if you think about growing a plant, you are having to wipe out a forest, right? So let's start with the fact that that's not exactly a kind thing to do. You do have to kill tons of living things to actually do agriculture, right? So the point is that you anyway have to do that. We have no problems with that because it is fundamentally more moral to feed a human being than to save an animal, right? So you can hold this position and still be kind. And you can still be against industrial farming at the scale that happens in North America. It is just insane. There is no doubt about it at all. But a farmer having 2 or 3 cows and having chickens running around, I think is the other end of the spectrum that you absolutely cannot ignore, right? Yes, I'm still with you that a person sitting in Mumbai ordering chicken that comes from these giant caged farms, we can definitely do better. There is no doubt about it, right? But at the same time, we domesticated animals that eat agricultural waste. These are not animals that survive in the wild, right? So if you take a rice plant, 95% of the bulk and weight of the rice plant is inedible to us, fiber, like insoluble fiber, if you will, right? And that's what herbivores have with their ruminant stomachs are able to do, and we domesticated these particular ruminant species for that very reason. I mean, we domesticated, dogs from wolves as a companion, as for protection and so on. We domesticated horses specifically for certain things. We domesticated ruminants for precisely this, for turning that agricultural waste into protein. Now, yes, it seems cruel, but this has been the cycle of food for like 10,000 years, right? For sure, again, I'm with you. Industrial farming is an absolute abomination of that original cycle, right? And we must absolutely be plant forward as much as possible, get as much of our nutrition from plant as possible, but having this fundamentalist idea that now I'm not going to eat any animal, and therefore that is the definition of kindness, that I think is a bit too much.
2-3 aspects on that we are speaking. So you are talking about ethical, and she's talking about spiritual, and then we spoke to him about being in the healthier part.
I'm also talking about nutrition.
Nutrition, obviously. We'll come to that, but I cannot speak so much together. So yeah, talking about this point. So coming to spirituality, you cannot be spiritual when there is a dead animal in your plate. That's the basic concept. That's the first thing. You cannot be spiritual when you are eating a dead animal. Yeah.
Which scripture says
I
this?
can understand. How do you make that statement?
Based on what?
On what basis, right? So yes,
Yeah.
for you may not be able to be spiritual.
Yeah.
How do you get to decide that she or me or him cannot be spiritual or kind because there's a dead animal on our plate? You don't think there's a dead animal on your plate? It's not literally, but there's every little bit of that dead animal that had to be cleared to grow that rice or wheat. It's there. It's there on your plate. You just don't see it, right? Civilization is cruelty against nature. Human civilization is cruelty against nature. That's the choice we've made.
It is about minimizing harm with intent, though. Animals.
That-
Right,
Minimizing is
you draw the
important.
line at a certain point. Somebody else says, yeah, I'm going to do this, but I'm also going to eat an egg because there's no
But
other
that doesn't mean
way.
you go to the extreme of harm to justify it. The point is,
But we
causing
don't know
as
actually-
minimal
we don't
harm
actually
as
know.
That's
possible.
the whole point. It's a spectrum, right? So yes, you're saying you're better than someone else because you do
No
not
one's
eat
saying
eggs.
that.
or
not saying
that. But the point is that you fail to recognize that there are probably people with a spectrum of ideas of how much animal protein they eat, right? There are most people in India. Again, let me remind you, 7.6 kgs per year is our per capita. Global average, 40.
And we are
We
also
are
the most spiritual nation.
the most vegan, country on the planet, right? So the point is that we don't have to be fundamentalist about saying no, absolutely no eggs or no dairy, especially in a country which literally has the lactose tolerance gene in the north and west of the country. It is part of our almost 6,000 year heritage of dairying, and that's essentially how that part of the world even survived, right? For sure, you can argue that I can now get that from soy and tempeh and tofu and so on. I don't think that's going to work for somebody in rural Gujarat or somebody in so on, right? So I think we have to take sort of nuance.
Yeah.
I'm with you, right? If your argument is that Ashok must eat more tofu than paneer, I'm with you, right? Because tofu is more sustainable, right? It has far less calories for the same amount of grams. I can make both a nutritional claim that tofu is better,
Correct.
and so on, right? But at the same time, holistically speaking, it's not something that you can force everyone to say that, no, this is the ethical and the right thing to do.
No, I'm not talking about. So what thing is, so every life, every birth we take, we are going to, like you said, in agriculture, when we take rice, we are killing the insects and everything. So that is going to happen. That is what we call karma. Exactly, in spiritual way, that is what we call karma, because we are going to harm some or the other person or the other creature in some way. But the point is, how can we make it the most minimum? Is when
Without damaging yourself.
Without damaging yourself.
But
Without
we
harming
can't,
yourself.
we
It's a one
can't
thing.
really
There's a
calculate
one thing.
everything, right? Do we really have a spiritual calculator always on our hands? Can we always be like, this is 10 cows here versus 1,000 bees dying in supposedly almond agriculture or whatever the whole thing is? Also coming to your point, the spirituality thing whole. 3,000 years ago, Buddha said one thing. He was like, the cessation of the mind is true spirituality. And when when the mind recedes back, you're actually getting deeper into your body. And your body is demanding meat. What do you do then?
Exactly. When your body is asking for something.
Your body is demanding the dead meat on your plate, and you are perfectly spiritual. Your mind is backward. You are listening to your body. It is craving it. There are studies that are like EEG meters, which are showing that people who have not eaten meat in their life, they have a craving for that through those EEG meters.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, right? So if you sort of take his point, right, about the net good, about ethics and so on, right?
Yeah.
Every epidemiological study in any country says that for children, again, this is not true for adults, for children up to the age of, I think, 14 or 15, that the consumption of milk is associated with significantly better health outcomes, better bone density, better calcium, whole
Increased height.
a lot of positive things. Now, again, if you were to take this position that somehow the idea that getting milk out of this animal is fundamentally unethical because you are herding, you are forcibly keeping that cow pregnant back to back, artificially inseminating, surely cruelty is involved and so on, right? So you're making this calculus that somehow you have to minimize cruelty. I think having stunted children is pretty cruel.
Yeah.
I would argue that is more cruel than exploiting the cow. The point is that it does not mean that we should exploit the cow.
Yeah.
I just want us to have a nuanced view that this is not as easy a calculus.
And I totally agree. But we also have studies from all across the world that vegetarians and vegan children, now because there's a point brought up of children, studies in Finland, studies in Poland, studies in Germany. Of course, we don't have studies from India because I don't think we have done a study in India because we don't have a big drawn vegan population. But the stunted growth totally not working,
I would love to see. I would love to see those studies.
I'd love to see those
I
studies.
would love to. Please, can you complete your point? Please, can you complete your point?
What you told him, which is that the higher quality meta umbrella studies about fiber tell you that at population level, broadly, if you had to guess whether fiber is good for you, it is undoubtedly good. Like again, his point is that no, it's not good for me because I'm in that small segment of population that have this unique genetic individual condition. For me, that works, right? And you said, yeah, but if you look at the population data, fiber is good. This is exactly the same problem with some of these things. Now, a couple of things. Vegans disproportionately in countries like Finland, in Europe, wherever these studies have come, vegans are disproportionately amongst the richest people in that society. So therefore, adjusting for that, it is not going to be practical to determine that somehow that a vegan diet is better for children than a diet that includes milk and eggs.
Not saying that it's better for children. All I'm saying is that if a parent chooses, like let's say I'm a vegan parent and I have a vegan child, at my place.
Yes.
you know, like for example, if a non-vegan parent is there, or non-vegetarian, or a vegetarian parent, how a kid would be brought in the similar lifestyle, at least in the earlier portion of their lives.
Yes.
Kids will make the decision. I mean, parents will make the decision for their kids.
Yeah.
Similarly, vegan parents have made a decision for their kids. We have significant outcome data, and I will share that with you.
Sure. Happy to look at that. But as I said, until experts, the health experts in many of these countries, where they do punish parents that force vegan diets on like toddlers and so on, till that changes, till the science manages to change these experts' minds, I'd still like to look at the story. Well, we'll
But what do you think about like these starvation deaths that have happened due to veganism?
But yeah, look,
like the children who are. Let me just
But those
complete.
are crazy people. Like, we can't take crazy cases.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
use
I mean,
that
those are
as-
fruitarians, right? Like, I already agree with you on fruitarian point. Like, I literally made a recent reel that, and I honestly believe fruitarians are equal to carnivores. I think fruitarians are the equivalent of carnivores.
No, they're not. They don't get their
fruitarians
protein.
die. Carnivores don't die.
Yeah.
Oh, carnivores do die. Very much do die.
We
I can,
haven't seen
share,
any.
with many cases, of
We haven't seen
carnivores.
Anecdotally, of course, we can.
Yeah. So then same anecdotally with fruitarians, right?
I don't think they're equivalent, because in nature, on the earth, amongst the 8 billion people, there are carnivores. A very small number, very small number, probably in the Arctic Circle, right, or in extreme places where there's like literally no plants.
Right.
So biologically, it's possible to adapt to that. Fruitarian is just simply devoid of basic nutrients. I don't think you can compare them.
You
I
can't. You
think
really
it's
can't.
just trying to
I mean,
say
we
that
have, like, a lot of-
You're just saying like the ideologically.
That's what I was
Ideologically,
thinking.
they're the
But
same.
nutritionally, they're not the same.
Yeah, I didn't mean it from a nutrition level.
Because nutritionally, this is complete.
just something that you were saying. I think for me, it's just, it always comes back to on a very basic level for me. I understand your point. You're saying that our bodies need it, that you needed it. It's
I needed my body, yeah.
station. When I always believe that if you need it for survival reasons, or there's some scientific reason that your body is like physically requiring something that perhaps a plant-based source can't provide you, fine, that makes sense. You can justify it. It's ethical, it's logical to me. But for the point I'm making is purely from an ethical perspective, that if I have a choice to not hurt an animal, how can I, and again, I know that you're saying that yes, to farm tofu and stuff, animal deaths occur. Yes, they do. The only way to not have any death is to kill yourself. That is the only way
Absolutely.
to not have
No,
any
you-
death.
as I said,
Which could happen, yeah.
The only
Right.
truly ethical way of eating is to photosynthesize.
So, okay, that's the only way to not harm anything. But we do want to live, obviously, we want to survive. The
Right.
point that Abhishek was making is we want to try, our ideals is that we want to try and survive by causing the most minimal harm. Now, how do we gauge minimal harm?
Yes.
We have to look at some basic facts. 75% of all of the world's plants are fed to the animals that we are breeding into existence to kill.
Yeah. Okay.
Most of the world's soy
Yeah.
is fed to animals. Humans only eat
No.
7% of the world's soy.
Yes.
So when we start looking at the data, we start to realize
Yeah.
that our footprint, and if we start talking about footprint now, a vegan diet is 73% less carbon
Yes.
footprint than someone who consumes a standard meat and dairy diet. The data, if we start looking at it from an environmental perspective, when we talk about minimizing, it's not just about
Yeah.
is jangad ko nahi marna hai. But say there's other factors. Ki what is the best step to try and minimize our how gently can we step on this?
Sure.
We fucked the earth. When I've been talking to climate experts, literally in the next 5 to 7 years, we have fucked this world so bad. It's likely to get so hot they're all going to die in the next 10 years anyway. Unlikely that we're going to be living in livable conditions, basically.
Yeah.
Things have to change. Animal agriculture has to change. But when we start talking about ki, the farm with a couple of guy and a couple of chickens, it's so nice.
Yeah.
The problem is that's an exception.
It's
Because
not.
when there's demand, things have to be industrialized and commercialized. The problem is everyone is eating meat, everyone is eating dairy. 99% of the meat in America comes from factory farms.
Yes.
99%.
Yep. That's
It's
true.
insane.
Yeah.
But that's because there's demand. And when there's demand, it's commercialized. So unfortunately, we've created the system where we view animals as products. We don't view them as individuals. We've given moral status to dogs and we treat a chicken like she's a product. But who has decided this stuff?
Right.
Like, would you eat a Labrador?
So
So the data also says that if US ka 4% population quits meat, the entire African population can eat
Yeah.
वो उतना, that is the ratio.
What will
Okay.
the actual
You can see the data is misrepresented here.
So
No, so that is the okay.
So I
And
will-
also,
75,
there are two
like
aspects.
she pointed out the
That
data,
are two,
like it
yeah,
was
yeah. There are two aspects to
75%.
it.
Wait,
Yeah,
just
I'm coming back. I'm coming back. There are two aspects to it. एक जो इन्होंने बोला भी, I'm adding it to add that कि इतना मीट छोड़ता है तो because there is so much crops used for animal production.
Yes.
ठीक है, that is one thing.
Yeah.
That is one thing. And second thing, what you are saying, what is कि अगर जैसे हमने अभी रिसेंटली एक वीगन एक्टिविस्ट ने एक वीडियो अपलोड किया था कि अगर एक गोट को हमको बड़ा करना है 1 साल में और whatever, for whichever reason you want to sell it or you want to slaughter it, whatever it is, so one year you have to feed that goat. तो जब आप एक गोट को प्रॉपर एक वनस्पति भोजन खिलाओगे, one time full meal that you can feed one human being. Okay, it can be vegetarian, it can be vegan, it can be grains, हाँ. तो vegetarian proper meal आपने एक गोट को खिलाया and that one meal you have to feed it for like 365 days, 1 साल. तो 1 साल में वो गोट हो जाएगा 25 kilos and then we slaughter it and we get 10 kilos of mutton. 10 kilos of mutton is fed to 50 people. So concept is the 50 people को लोगों को खाना देने से अच्छा we could have given 365 meals to 365 people. That is the ratio when it comes to footprint. That is what it is. Beef का उससे भी ज़्यादा है. The amount of water it takes and the chicken का उससे थोड़ा सा कम है. That time, so when it comes to vegetables, it is very less. Okay, that this is the footprint perspective. Now coming to the health perspective, like इन्होंने जैसे बोला कि सबको सूट नहीं होता. There are the vegans are doing extremist things कि मतलब एकदम ही इस पे चले गए, सूट नहीं हो रहा है तो फिर भी कर लिया. Like he accepted that he is a extremist. तो he told कि अब थोड़ा सा फाइबर ऐड कर दो बिकॉज वी ऑल नो द बेसिक फंक्शन ऑफ फाइबर कि अगर थोड़ा सा फाइबर होगा तो ऐसा लगता है कि हमें ऐसा लगता है कि इसका परफॉर्मेंस और इम्प्रूव हो सकता है या पहले उनको गाइडेंस नहीं मिला अभी भी लाइक ही सेड कि थोड़ा सा आप इंट्रोड्यूस करो तो शायद से एब्जॉर्प्शन बेटर हो जाए एंड हो सकता है एंड ही इज एक्सेप्टिंग दैट ही इज एन एक्सट्रीमिस्ट. तो व्हाट आई एम सेइंग कि वो भी हम full population, normal population को suggest नहीं कर सकते. Like Kuntal was saying, what we can do is we are not talking about suggesting this to the entire population. That is what we can do. Like आपने बोला कि thyroid के लिए फाइबर सूट नहीं हुआ. We don't give broccoli to thyroid patients. Okay, IBS patients को तो fit ही नहीं होगा फाइबर. But again, coming back to the same, India has the largest capital of diabetes. Now there are two aspects to it. Again, diabetes can be reversed in a whole food plant-based diet. Diabetes can also be reversed in a meat diet because we all know that carbs reduce करना है. We have to add lean meat. You have to add lean meat. The individual has to become active and you have to add fiber. So diabetes can be reversed in both that. I'm not taking any point कि हाँ ये best है diabetes reverse करना ये best है diabetes. Diabetes can be reversed, but fiber आप जो बोल रहे हैं eliminate करने का, it cannot be suited to everyone. It's the same. It's the point. So जैसे
So I will want to let's start with the sustainability footprint.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a very common fallacy that is often committed by vegans who are activists on social media is that they use this data from the US, okay, without any knowledge of how agriculture works in India, right? So since you throw out some numbers, I want to throw out some numbers. You can go fact check them.
Yeah.
75% of India's greenhouse gases come from fossil fuels and coal and energy production, right? Cars, driving, energy, electricity, everything, right? 14% comes from agriculture. Okay, this is much higher in the West because there is no industrial animal husbandry in India. We do not have giant beef farms. We know that 25% of US's greenhouse gases come from beef cattle, right? That is not true in India. Because India does not have giant cattle farms, we have small holdings. The average number of cows per farmer is like 2 or 3.
But we are the largest livestock of cows.
That's fine, right? But again, I'll tell you why. Okay, listen to this, right? So that's why our greenhouse gas emissions from all of agriculture is like 14%. In that 14%, half comes from cattle, right? From enteric fermentation, methane, all the things that are produced by cattle, right? And what's the second largest contributor of greenhouse gases? Rice cultivation. Because paddy cultivation, when you grow paddy, you have to flood the soil. When you flood the soil bacteria, those actually produce carbon dioxide. So they pull carbon dioxide out and it's actually net carbon negative, right? So dairy cattle is the biggest contributor. It's only 14%. Rice is the significant one. Poultry, mutton, fish, seafood, don't even register. And I didn't make this data up. It's from the government. It's from Niti Aayog. Go look up the data. So the reason, and in fact, if you can read papers that explain why the Indian system of small-scale cooperative farming, the way we collect dairy, the way we do small-scale farming, etc., without large, giant industrial farms, is genuinely a better and more sustainable form of agriculture, including animal husbandry, because animal husbandry barely registers in the carbon footprint. You know, the soy we import has a far worse footprint than all of the poultry footprint that we have in India, which again goes back to the point that our Indian culture in every state is very plant forward, right? Per capita meat consumption is for sure increasing, but we are still 80% protein deficient. 80% of the population is protein deficient, right? So again, my point is that if you're going to use data, you have to use data from India. You cannot use data from the West. The second thing, I don't know about you, but giving vanaspati to a goat is not a sustainable economic business practice. That's not how it works. The average goat is eating waste. It's recycling. Again, remember, animal husbandry in India, we are a very poor country. It is about cyclical. It's one of the most sustainable ways, right? People produce waste. There is agricultural waste. In urban, there's people waste food. The goats are walking around eating that stuff. I mean, of course, they're eating paper. Of course, they're eating plastic. All that is an issue, for sure, right? But it's cyclical, right? So my point is that, of course, it is sure that when you eat meat, you are eating above the food chain. Of course, it's going to be more carbon intensive than eating plants. But you have to look at it from the overarching context of the Indian subcontinent and the way agriculture works here, right? The last point, think about protein source for the vast majority of the Indian public. I'm not speaking about us sitting in like a posh. We can afford, we can make a choice, we can pick any protein source we want, right? I mean, I like trying all of these plant-based meat alternatives from all of these newer meat substitute-based things. I try every possible thing, right? But the average person, think about the average person in India, tur dal is like 120 or 100 rupees per kg, right? I mean, I could be wrong depending on the inflation, right? For that person, in the village ecosystem, animal protein is free because animal protein grows and feeds off the waste. And that's how these villages and this culture is built. Why do we sacrifice every Hindu cult everywhere, every small subgroup? They all the moment you go to a village, there are animal sacrifices. Yes. It's being part of that culture. We might think it's cruel, we might believe all of this stuff, but it's you go and tell that person that you are being unkind, that you're being cruel and so on. That's 5,000 years of history. It's culture. It gets into your culinary culture and so on. So that's why I'm saying, yes, we all have to reduce. The West has to reduce protein consumption, animal protein consumption. But I am not willing to accept that India has to reduce animal protein consumption. India has to increase first. Let's first get rid of protein deficiency. Then we can speak about whether or not.
But that can also be done in a compassionate way. So, and talking about sacrifice, of the scriptures
it is not compassionate.
Say animal sacrifice.
It is not compassionate to have stunted children. It is absolutely cruel.
Or a B12 deficient adult. Or
a B12 deficient adult.
Now
or what rate of anemia? 50% of India.
57%.
57% is anemic. These are far more cruel things, right? I'm with you, right? So again, I will also say one thing, right? I appreciate Amy because she took on this cause, right? You feel passionately about animals. That's a fantastic thing. Let's not pretend that that is the only way to be kind. Let's, in the context of food, right? We all have different paths, right? In every other case, we might be doing something else. For example, a doctor who goes to every village and says, you need to eat more red meat and cures anemia is being incredibly kind. You cannot argue that he's not being kind just because you have chosen to focus only on animal cruelty as one aspect of this.
But there are other ways to cure it.
So,
that don't
No.
involve.
So then
you can go to a village and give them expensive your sodium ascorbate-based supplements to kids. I don't think that's practical. Because red meat is right there. You think people will take medicines in villages? They will just simply absolutely.
And then what are we doing? We're taking people away from food, which is a natural source of nutrients, and making them dependent on
a company who's going to source that,
pharmaceutical,
right? Or government welfare, for that matter, right? Yeah.
Any of that. It's artificially giving a nutrient that you can naturally get from nature.
We have also seen the dangers with that. We have seen the dangers very well. Vitamin D, if we supplement it, it actually increases heart risk. And vitamin D naturally it decreases heart risk. and we have seen this with iron as well, supplementation, and with B12 as well. B12 we supplemented for pregnant mothers, and they on the face of it and with blood tests they look that they have sufficiency of B12, but their children they show severe signs of B12 deficiency, and this is documented, this is seen everywhere.
So
And
Amy,
I'm not
Everywhere. I know so many
I am
children.
not.
There are
Let's not get into anecdotes.
It's not anecdotes.
No, I'm talking about her. She mentioned that I've seen so many vegan children. So I'm like,
so Amy, that point that you had, that if all of us keep eating, then we'll eat more, and then it will just become more and more farming. So that's where education plays a role. Like if you teach people what he spoke of, what we have in India is really regenerative agriculture. Like
Yes.
you cannot farm goats. Like I spoke to a few butchers, like what is really going on? How are you getting your goats? He's like, ये पागल रहती बकरियां, इनको हम farm में रखते हैं, मर जाते. So
Agreed. Mostly goats in India are grass fed because they cannot be grain fed. They instantly they start having diseases. Like
So what
it's
they
something
do
about goats.
with goats in India is they are let loose, they're eating, they're grazing, and as they're grazing, they're pooping, and that poop is adding to the general forest or the farms that they're eating in. So teaching people how to procure. So this is not about going to KFC and just ordering like a bucket of. I would never do that.
Yes.
I would never ever recommend that. I would never tell someone that that's your source of protein. But okay, you need maybe like X amount of eggs in your diet. If you're willing to just eat eggs, then look for sources. And in India, thankfully, we can do that. Like everything is so hyper local here. I have my network in Pune where I can get my eggs from a guy who has chickens running on his farm, and like he knows which eggs to give. There's a farmer with there's a dairy guy with 2 cows. So if I ever have to have dairy, I don't usually because it impacts my gut. The mutton, I've spoken to the butcher. I've asked like, where are you getting your goats from? I want to know like what are they eating. So if you make these choices, then you're not demanding this crazy commercial meat.
Agreed. It's very sustainable in India.
But if you choose to do it for you, like how much do I need? Like 150 grams of meat for one meal. That gives me my protein for the day. And I need, like in the morning, I have about 30 grams of protein. I get that from 50 grams of prawn and 50 grams of mincemeat. Like 250 grams.
Again,
So I will only agree
No, I
that
think the point is-
poultry for sure is
Yeah.
the most industrialized.
Poultry is bad.
Exactly.
Compared to mutton, compared to beef, compared to milk.
And see,
Yeah.
No,
and
coming
seafood.
to the same point. Yeah, coming to the same point that you said and what she was saying. See, how many people are like आपने बोला कि veganism है, vegan products. How many people have the access in the villages? Talking about the metro cities and in India, how many people have the access to organic chicken or the amount of poultry? Like you said, I'm adding to the
Poultry
same
is
point.
bad.
The amount of poultry farm. अगर आप एक middle class आदमी chicken लेना है तो कहाँ से chicken लेगा? वो लेगा poultry से. It's all injected.
That
Then
data,
you can't
see,
tell
the
them.
data should show. Na? See,
Ah.
yes, your argument is right.
Yeah.
If indeed everybody in the city is consuming unholy, unsustainable amounts of chicken, it will show in the consumption and greenhouse data, and it will show in India not having protein deficiency. Why are 80% people protein deficient then? Which means that even the person in the city eating chicken is not eating it every day. Most people cannot afford it.
They cannot. They are doing once in a week. But even if they are doing once in a week or twice in a week, what are they doing? They are actually contributing the same commercial. And now talking about only chicken, I'm talking only about commercial thing. So talking about your poultry farm and talking about dairy. Now India is the largest producer and consumer of milk, and the demand is not increasing because there is a demand in villages. The demand is coming from the cities. So we are the largest producer and consumer of milk. And how is the milk produced? How are the cows kept? And is the whole point. Now if you're talking me, okay, I have an access to 2 cows. Okay, so we are vegan. Okay, we are doing it for the animals perspective and
Sure.
environment
And that's great.
perspective.
That's very
Okay,
noble.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yes.
I would the basic context is we don't need milk, so we won't go do that. But the majority of the people that like people are saying कि हमको milk चाहिए. Okay, now I have access to 2 cows. Okay, घर पे है, वो उसका बच्चा है वहाँ से, and she is feeding her baby and everything, and you're drinking milk, and you're not torturing the cow and everything. How many people have access to that milk?
No, hold on. See, first thing is that all of these hypotheticals of how bad or how worse it could be in the future is extrapolation. You have to go with what we have today and what we've had for like centuries, right? India has, the reason why Burki's Korean is just considered such a worshipped, right, is because he tapped into a completely regenerative, sustainable, non-industrial way to source dairy from a part of the world that is so hot and humid where milk spoils in half an hour, and still managed to create the equivalents of Amul and now the Operation Flood and the every cooperative society that we have, where every farmer having 1 or 2 cows is able to collect the milk beyond the excess that he's not able to consume, beyond the excess that the calf does not need, is all taken to that nearest collection center. And then basically refrigeration, homogenization, pasteurization, all of that stuff sort of happens. The fact that we did it in the 1960s and 70s is remarkable. No, everywhere else in the world, all you've seen, I think the problem is that you see these pictures of these cows in these mechanical industrial cages with electronic udders and pulling the milk out and like completely being sort of that is the picture you have in your mind. That is not how milk is.
So a lot of what I do is I visit physical farms, because it's one thing to sit here and talk about oh cows this, as in so many vegans you see itna baat karte hain lekin really mein unhone dekha nahi hai ki ho kya raha hai. I'm on the opposite end as well, and so pretty much every farm I have visited, and 𝐼𝐸 colony is one that I've been to a lot as well, most recently. Standard practice in India is in no way, shape or form a metric for anything that is ethical or good, in the sense that every farm you visit, every cow is being injected with oxytocin. Okay? Every cow, we interviewed so many staff members, and one staff member told us there were like 30 to 40 babies that were there.
Sure.
And he was telling us that these babies are being picked up tomorrow to be taken to slaughter at Dionar. And this is what the routinely is what happens. And then these babies, the meat is either sold as like regular beef, or it's actually sold, mislabeled as chicken or mutton. And he was like, sabko pata hai, police ko pata hai, local politicians ko pata hai, lekin karne dete hain. Now, this cycle is repeating with these cows, and I saw so many cows being beaten, hit, tied up their entire lives, being forced to be impregnated, have children. Again and again and again, this cycle repeated, and then ultimately these cows are then also killed in the Dionar. So I fail to understand how anyone can sit there and say, "Ha, theek hai, ye hamare culture mein hai, to hum kar sakte hain." Meanwhile, ragi milk has been in our culture for thousands of years.
In some parts of India.
In southern parts of India.
In some specific southern parts.
Theek hai, but the point is, it's part of our culture in some way, shape, or form.
It's not as universal as just dairy milk.
Sure, that's fine. But just because we've done something doesn't justify doing it now. For hundreds of years, we also raped. For hundreds of years, we may have enslaved Black people. Does that justify continuing it? No, we evolve as a species, and we consider other viewpoints and maybe better ways of doing things. And then just on a common sense level, my question is, are we cows? No. Do we need to still be would I want to suckle on my mother's breasts now? Maybe not. I don't think I feel compelled to do that. So then my question is, if I don't need to have dairy milk now, why have we perpetuated this idea that we need to be impregnating another species and stealing her children, killing her children, keeping her in the cycle? We don't need to.
So with milk, we can really bypass it. That I am with you. Like, you don't really need to drink milk.
I think we all can agree.
What he's saying is,
anybody describing the worst possible conditions on a farm, of course you
Exactly.
This is not what's possible.
No, sir said standard. What sir said is, we have the image of mechanical farms. हम जो सोच रहे हैं cruelty.
But mechanical farms नहीं है, but फिर भी cruelty बहुत ज़्यादा है, और ये सिर्फ एमी का नहीं है. We have a movie called माँ का दूध, which has gone into hinterland of India and has discovered the same cruelty in every farm.
You can make a movie or a documentary about any anecdotal amazing thing or a terrible thing, right? Nobody, me included, is claiming that India's agriculture is a picture of pastoral.
But you just claimed that. You just claimed that 5 minutes ago. You claimed that. You claimed that. No. You very much claimed that. That Korean is the godfather. That Korean created this. That Korean created that.
Those practices that you're talking about, those practices have just started.
They have not just started.
In the past 30 years.
In past 30 years.
In the past 30 years. And this is not culture of India. Before that, the milk that was happening was actually regeneratively raised.
140 crore लोग हैं, ये होने ही वाला है.
So coming back to the
100%.
question, do we
Right.
need
But
milk?
as I said,
Exactly.
let's solve the 80% protein malnutrition issue, and then we can speak about all this.
And by the way, you're constantly saying that we are protein deficient. We are not protein deficient, we are protein insufficient.
Okay.
That is a huge difference.
All right.
ठीक है?
Protein insufficient.
हाँ.
Yeah.
So and that is very solvable.
Because you said the
Because
image
if you
of
look at the ICMR guidelines just says 0.8 grams per kg
Right.
of body weight is
Yes,
required.
yes.
And that can easily be gotten.
Survival. That is for survival. That is not for thriving. That is for
doing
survival.
it.
So Kuntal,
Then why
couple of
doesn't the
things.
data show that 80% are
See, wait.
No, people data doesn't show it's protein deficient. I will be very clear. It is not deficient.
50%
Because the
of children
guidelines
are
are in-
stunted, and the data directly says it's protein, energy, malnutrition.
So we
Just
have,
look at the
we
data.
have
I would like to
malnutrition
see
in
that.
India.
See that.
And like, see now for the last 5 years, we've been looking at blood work constantly. Every time we get vegan vegetarian clients, we do see from markers like creatinine 1 and all, it's low. The question is like, do we need dairy nutritionally?
We
From
don't
my
do. Yes,
perspective,
correct.
we
We don't.
don't.
That's
And
not-
we
yeah,
don't
that's
need
what
to
the
do that.
argument is.
We do need animal protein. I'm like eggs and seafood and
No, but that's what I'm saying. We don't need it.
no, that is a different perspective.
Yeah.
Dairy,
That's
the
it.
picture you
You disagree, but yeah.
like that dairy picture where it's becoming commercial.
Yeah, but for you to sit there and say we need it,
We
would
don't
be
need-
dead.
We don't need
We would
it.
be dead. We're alive and thriving.
Yeah.
So
How-
to
I think
anyone
if
who
it's, I think if it's
Individually-
regeneratively raised, we can
individually
actually.
so
do
we started with
But
that.
she's saying you need animal protein.
She's saying
She's
making a
said that.
collective
I
point.
said
like
that
India
at the
as a
beginning.
society.
No, but India as a society also doesn't need animal protein.
Why would Ayurveda?
Why would you say that?
Graphs on those?
No, why would you
say
not
that?
say
Animal
that?
protein. Animal protein.
Kuntal, tell me why in Charak Samhita, which is like the text of Ayurveda.
Let's not get into Ayurveda. Right? I'm not going to get into Ayurveda.
Why not?
I'm not going to claim Ayurveda as some, like some authoritative text or anything.
You said India doesn't need. Ayurveda came from India. In Charak Samhita,
It's part of
you
the
have,
culture. Yeah.
But
according
everything
to
part of the
doshas,
culture doesn't need to be, taken
according-
forward.
Are you denying Ayurveda has a
Don't
place?
look at science
I'm
and
denying
all
that, yeah.
Ayurveda is not science?
It is not science.
All right, then I just will not.
It is not.
Whether or not it's a scientific
And neither is homeopathy.
Yeah.
So I'm, here, going to state that homeopathy
Homeopathy is not
science.
science and Ayurveda is not science. Then allopathy is science.
100%.
Then show me blood work where someone who's consistently without supplements eating dals doesn't have a protein deficiency.
I will show you my supplement. I will show you my blood work.
and you will allow me to analyze
Population,
as per the
100%.
functional
No, she
spectrum
said
parameter.
my data. She said my. I will give you
anyone.
mine.
She said
on
anyone.
this. I want to see this actually
We're sort of
happen.
switching,
data.
sort of switching between.
I was actually thinking this, that we should all get a blood test done.
I'm 100%.
Yeah.
After this, we should get it done.
Yes, yes.
Let's go. That'll be fun. It is your prize at the end.
100%. I anyways got it done like a couple of weeks ago. So I'm,
Every
more than happy
single one
to.
of us here is in many ways a genetic freak, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Healthy. Everyone is pretty
We
healthy.
were just discussing his genetics, right? Like his one side of the family is completely opposite of what he is, and his like everything is like his grandfather, and it's strange. So genetics, biology, environment, toxins, everything plays a role in how we absorb our nutrition and what our nutritional needs are, and therefore we cannot generalize to a population.
Yeah.
Kuntal. We can't. I'm saying everyone needs animal protein based on the blood work that I repeatedly see from my clients. They do so much better when we add that, but there are people who like, I'm a vegan, I'm not going to eat it. Like, now fix my health. I can't reject that person. I can't say that, no, I'll only choose to work with people who go to eat animal protein. And then I'm like, okay, if you're not going to eat it, then you have to accommodate for what your body is telling us. So then supplements become important, protein shakes, essential amino acids, B12, all of these things have to be added. But if someone says, no, I want to eat what I'm eating, I'm not going to take supplements and now fix my health, then I'm like, bhai, nahi hoga mujhse. Like, I also have my limits.
So we have
Just
to
to
look
be clear, no, I don't think there is any argument that we need to be more plant forward. There is no argument about that at all. From a sustainability standpoint, on a long-term basis, globally, there is no, right? Plants are some of the most micronutrient dense things you can eat. There is no doubt about it.
As
Exceptions.
compared to liver. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so within obviously within organ meats for sure are super micronutrients.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it at all. But net, right? Everybody's not going to have access to liver every single day, but they're going to have access to plants, right? That, in fact, I would actually say mostly plants, and then if you can eat like organ meats, eggs, and so on, that's a perfectly like fine meal and also practical for most people in India. It hits the sweet spot between I eat it culturally, right? People, I think the best diet is the diet you can sustain. And if you're arguing against the basic psychology that I have to eat some weird foreign tasting source of protein, like tofu or a tempeh or something like that, and instead of eating what I'm used to eating, which is maybe paneer, right, for all that. And again, I'm not saying it's because paneer is healthier than tofu. It is not. Tofu may very well be lower calories, same protein and so on. But I just simply like the taste. I think people forget that food is not just... So you can't be jumping between... If I say it's tasty, you then say, but it's cruel. But if I say, well, maybe cruelty is a relative thing, you can then jump to sustainability. Then when you say sustainability, then if I point out that, look, the data from India does not show that agriculture today is unsustainable, animal agriculture today. For sure, demand is increasing. And then we hopefully will maintain some of that circular nature of that. There is no doubt that there is cruelty happening on farms, right? But I will point out that cruelty to children by keeping them stunted is far worse. Right? I will be the happiest person in the world if somebody can come and solve all of protein malnutrition in India with vegan sources, all for it. Right? At the end of the day, it's that problem. I'm not particular that it has to be solved with meat.
आपके point पे, if I want to add something, is also access and guidance. Like, you know, इनको जैसे when he started his journey and he was vegan.
Yeah.
So being in the industry for like more than a decade and training and coaching people, I've seen. It is not the first example that you said. I've seen so many people. लोग vegan गए और बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है. And suddenly they started feeling अरे ये नहीं हो रहा है. But that's because I have seen उसमें से जितना भी population I have seen in the last 12 years and the people who have coming to the gym, what I have seen them is they were not guided. वो भी इसी चक्कर में गए, अरे I don't want to harm the animals, and वो चले गए. But अगर उन्होंने guidance लिया होता है nutritionist or dietitian से, तो they could have done a very good and very good performance or really did.
See, the thing about carnivore and vegan diets that is never done properly.
What are the same?
Like everyone says the same thing, but like the point you're missing the finer details.
And the
point is
accessibility.
See, the same confidence that you have, that both of you have,
Yeah.
that he was misguided, that he was not guided properly.
It can be. It's not like 100%. Yeah.
If you had been there,
Yeah.
you could have guided him and kept him on that path.
100%. 100%.
That confidence.
Yeah.
You need to have the humility to accept that there are other paths.
Yeah.
That she could very well say, you know what, you're having all these problems, you're on this plant-heavy diet. I'm going to make you eat organs. I'm going to fix that anemia. And you don't then get to come there and say, oh no, that's cruel. Oh no, that's unsustainable. Oh no, all of that. Especially when nothing about India's agriculture tells you that the data, now we can speak enough anecdotes. You can speak about the Vanaspati goat. She can speak about the farm where cows were beaten. Right? We can speak about enough examples, anecdotal examples all day. But the only fundamentally at the policy level, what are you going to look at? You're going to look at where the greenhouse gas is coming from. Are people showing malnutrition? Are they having vitamin D, vitamin B12, anemia, and protein energy malnutrition and so on? And stunting. 50% of kids being stunted. If that's what is shown in the data, then all it means is that we must all have the humility to accept that there are multiple paths, including the vegan path. There's no single path. We are products of genetics. We're products of culture. We're also deeply individual products of what we like eating and what satisfies us and so on. So, and if that's doable in a plant-only path, fantastic. If it's doable in an animal-only path, absolutely fantastic. If it's doable, any mix of whatever it is, I think it's fine. And I think let's not forget, as I said, that India's agriculture is very different from the West. This is not a mechanized industrial agricultural society. In fact, it is not modernizing at any pace at all, right? We're not seeing farms become bigger. We're not seeing more mechanization. We're actually seeing it's like flattening. People are just leaving. This actually distress more than anything else. And we're already a mostly plant-heavy society, right? So I think somehow I feel that the discourse has to be somewhere. It has to be, the logic has to apply differently for the West than it does, at least for India. At least that's my idea.
For me, it's just that, like, when we actually look at the American Dietetics Association or the British Dietetics Association, they all agree that a plant-based diet is healthy for humans, whether they are children or whether they are adults at any stage of life. And this is based off peer-reviewed research. Now, this is stuff we know. The data is there, as Kuntal has pointed out. So for me, when you're kind of seeing that it's fantastic whether you do it on carnivore, it's fantastic whether you do it on vegan, I don't think I agree with that, because the thing is, when I visited the largest egg producer supplier in Bombay, which happens to be in Thane, I walked in there and their setup is such a way that there is a giant pile of dead chickens on the left-hand side.
Sure.
Then you have 13,000 chickens that were crammed in these tiny, tiny rows, all fucked up looking, all basically had diseases,
Yep.
and the women were pulling out dead ones out of the cages and putting them on the pile. Half of them are alive in the pile, and then they bury them every day, the dead ones. And these chickens are just churning out eggs that is being recommended to people to eat as a vegetarian, whatever solution. And then these chickens go off to be slaughtered ultimately. Now, when we talk about how great Indian farming is, it's not, modernized and all this stuff, at the end of the day, when there's demand and we have this industrial scale stuff happening and we are treating animals like commodities, there is no way, shape or form or any way that we can be treating them with kindness and nicely. There's just no humane way to do that.
Yes.
So when we talk about scale, I agree with you. Like, I used to be a very staunch vegan to be like, oh, everyone has to be vegan. Maybe some people can't, and maybe it's just a matter of reducing, or maybe it's just a matter of making certain adjustments to be planned forward. Perhaps not everyone can get tofu every day, whatever, right? Which is fine. I just think that we have to not just look at things from an environmental perspective, what's most, data this, data that. There's also individuals that we're talking about. These are, like, if we have relationships with dogs, we understand these are little people. And we can't be looking at it just as data and numbers. There's another whole segment to this. So that's probably my only aspect. But anyway, I don't want to go on for another
Sure.
big
I just wish you would add that the number one consideration has to be that children cannot be stunted.
But what does that have to do
it
with,
has to.
being vegan?
Because the West is in a situation of plenty. They do not need to eat that much animal protein, and the fact that they still continue to do that. So the large-scale animal cruelty flies in the face of the abundance and the waste of the food system, right? That in the West, India is a country that's mostly malnourished.
And hunger
But it's
dominated.
malnourished because of the lack of education.
So
not
at
because
that,
of vegan or meat eater. It's a lack of
No.
education with
Hunger is-
basic nutrients.
Exactly.
Exactly.
not just
Accessibility
lack of
and
education.
knowledge.
Don't know where to get. People know
Hunger-
the basics around
No,
No, hunger is
that's
like
very
simply
arrogant.
unavailability of food.
No, it's arrogant to assume
Like I said,
hungry
accept-
people don't know
No.
what to eat. Hungry people will eat what is available.
Yeah.
Right? So therefore, in India, you have to put that consideration well before the consideration. Or let's put it this way. I am okay with you putting animals ahead. That's your consideration. That's your path in life. That's noble. That's fine. But you cannot look down on someone else who puts other considerations ahead, right? I don't think everyone has to be on board the fact that no, these are sentient beings and killing them and eating them is immoral, is not a position everyone needs to buy into.
No one's saying everyone. I'm saying people who have choice. And the fact is, most people do have a choice. And that is the point I'm making.
Most people
I'm not
in
talking
India do
about
not.
Mugdha and
Most people,
medical issues.
privileged
I'm
people who are living in the
Privileged people,
cities.
absolutely yes. I agree.
Yeah,
with you
most
that they
people.
must absolutely reduce their animal protein
And-
consumption or source them from free range sort of farms and those places that suits their cultural and nutritional and health related needs.
So I do
Because I may
agree.
not want to eat a diet filled with supplements.
I also do not agree to the point that you need to have a choice and you need to move towards plant-based proteins, because I think just to look at it from an animal protein perspective, it's simplifying the debate. You need to see the whole multitude of nutrients that you get out of it. And it's like I see this a lot of the times that for plant-based advocates, it's actually just mostly surviving. But like the nutrients that you need to thrive again, that is a whole together different debate. Like some of the nutrients are not just there in plant-based stuff. Like the whole choline, carnosine, taurine, that debate, it's still not there.
Carnitine is not required. It's not
You
essential.
can say anything, but like
creatine is not essential.
we see that with studies regularly, that when choline supplementation happens or when taurine supplementation happens, it actually improves your brain health.
I can show you, that vegetarians and vegans do as well as non-vegetarians.
On choline supplementation,
Exactly.
same thing.
Same thing.
I would love to
I
see
have
that
many
because I have
studies.
things right
I
now.
just saw that video like before coming here with multitude of studies. I will send you all of them.
I'd love to see that.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of things that are, and what about like the fats? I was really wondering about the fats. What do you think about like the role of EPA and DHA in brain health? And you don't find that is sufficiently that there's no clear way we can get them from plant-based nutrition, and it's very much needed for brain health.
You do not get it from plant-based.
Yeah, you do not get that. That's
from
what I'm
marine
saying.
sources.
Yeah. And it's the conversion
you
from
do get ALA, which can get converted.
conversion is very poor. Again, that's what I was
Conversion
trying
is
to
poor,
point out.
but it's still not at 5%.
It's very poor, not poor.
So one thing is, so when you are vegan, I agree to your point. Okay, EPA and DHA wise जब आता है, तो it is studies clearly show. I've studied American College of Council and ACE का proper fitness and sport nutrition specialist. What it shows are, आप जो बोल रहे हो करेक्ट है, बट नहीं होगा ऐसा नहीं हो सकता है, बट वीगन्स को 10% ALA ज्यादा खाना पड़ेगा. It is not impossible. The whole point is
10% भी शायद काफी नहीं होगा because
Agreed.
see now that course is world's top 6 course. Obviously that is American based or whatever it is. I mean there might be new studies. I agree. Science is completely changing modern every day. Okay. But the entire topic is it is not impossible. It is possible in a plant-based
that
diet.
is survival. What he's speaking about is thriving.
See, again, as I said,
There are many thriving vegans. So I disagree with that point also.
It's 8 billion people in the world. You can find enough people who can just live off ALA and have no problems and go on to become like Nobel winning and become the best athletes in the world. Absolutely. Because this is a law of large numbers. Given a large enough number and large enough diversity and variation, every single extremity will exist.
One exception. Yeah.
Yes. The chances of that existing is like 100%, right? You will find people like yourself. There will be also people who are severely having a problem, and the doctor will quietly say, just take this carnivore oil and you'll be fine, right? So the point is that the world is complicated.
Yeah.
If I can,
please.
if you are willing to take cod liver oil, why not just take algae oil?
It's not the same, no?
It is the same.
It is not.
It is.
Bioavailability is not the same.
बहुत अच्छा bioavailability है. I can share studies.
There is no argument. You can do like a spectrometric analysis, and cod liver oil is distinctly biologically different from algal oil. It is. There is no doubt in it. You say you don't trust Ayurveda, you say you don't trust homeopathy. This is pure science, which is on numbers.
This is pure science.
You cannot compare algal oil to cod liver oil.
Let's say studies of people doing direct algae oil to direct
not
cod
people.
liver.
You said biologically it is not different. I'll put algal oil through the machine and I'll put cod liver oil through the machine.
I don't care. I don't care. I care about the human outcome data.
That also I only care about. I also care about, not I only, sorry.
I only care about human
I also
algae.
see it doesn't matter.
Yeah, can you show? I can show you that algae oil will have similar human outcome data as cod liver oil.
No.
I will, yes. I will send you.
You send, there is a lot of things about like what he says about
that's what. So let's end it. Yeah. So that's what my point. That was
what he also said about other nutrients like hydroxyproline is something that's required for making collagen in your body. Now, people are selling vegan collagen on Amazon.
Vegan collagen doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. Okay, vegan collagen is nonsense. People should stop selling it.
Yeah.
People should stop calling it vegan collagen.
It is not directed
because
collagen
by definition is non-vegan.
Yeah.
Okay, there's no vegan about collagen.
Yeah.
And they are selling
I suppose they could synthesize it from like yeast and all that. That's, I think,
or they could do precision fermentation, but that is
so no, they fool it. It's a marketing gimmick. It's a collagen building.
Anyway, I think we are diverting.
What is the point about the whole? She made a point, and I just wanted to. You didn't complete the point. Like you were saying something about collagen. What was that?
No, I was agreeing with her. I'm like,
it's necessary.
with her on the call.
No, I was not going on that point.
No, the point he was making was there are certain nutrients unique in animals, not just protein, which are impossible to find in plant foods versus a lot of nutrients that you say that are important from plant foods that you would get from meat.
Yeah, there's almost everything in meat. Almost everything. I don't reckon anything that
which is I'm saying that the list that you said, I can very easily rebut that list because I care about human outcome data and I can share tons of human outcome studies.
What I am sharing is also human outcome.
But you are sharing from an anecdotal level. I'm talking at a very...
Bro, come on, yaar. I mean,
So,
we
but
need to do this right now.
5 minutes.
This is getting like, whatever I say, you just like completely
The whole point is
bashing it.
Don't see how is that possible in all probabilities that the data you speak about is always legit and the data he speaks about is
I'm not saying he's not saying legit
you have
data.
been constantly
No, you have-
dismissing. Whenever he speaks about data, you dismiss it. And whenever you speak about data, it's the only answer
He's
to
not
all these
dismissed
propositions.
it though.
Is
He said,
that both can actually find data.
No, so-
Yeah, exactly. I was telling the same point because it otherwise becomes a study versus study debate and it goes nowhere then.
And
No,
we
it's-
sit and cherry pick studies that support our claim, which is not the point of this conversation, I think, no?
So the right way to end is, so we all know that animal protein is superior. Okay, first class protein है, animal protein is superior, but the whole point is the same thing can be achieved in a plant-based
No, I
diet.
think no. So let's
And being
not,
a vegan.
we don't have to frame.
I think what Amy was saying is that
We don't
choice.
have to-
I'm not saying it is not a first class protein. I'm saying it is superior.
We don't have to frame it as superior, inferior at all. I would
Very good.
rather frame it as there are multiple paths to being healthy.
Yeah.
There are multiple paths to being ethical. There are multiple paths to being kind. You've chosen one path. That's fantastic. And I will accept and gladly give you the fact that this activism in the West is making a difference. And it has made a difference in reducing the impact of industrial agriculture's greenhouse gases, the amount of cruelty. I absolutely agree. At the same time, it is important to recognize that when I say India has some sort of a regenerative, it doesn't mean it's a utopian ideal. It is severely backward. It's racked by caste and it's racked by human cruelty. It's racked by overuse of all kinds of inputs, and it is terrible in many ways. There is no doubt about it. But it is nowhere the same thing as what
As the
happens in
West. I will agree to that.
And in that sense, and in India, the outcomes, the health outcomes, every single health outcomes indicates that people need to eat a lot more animal protein.
no, they
That's
need
what
more
they always
protein.
say.
They
They
need more
protein,
protein.
not animal protein.
That's
So
all.
I think what we can also
So yeah,
do is see what works.
Correct.
We always have the potential to make a choice.
Correct.
No one wants to really kill unless like you are a psychopath. You don't want to do that. You make a choice, see what works for you. You made a choice, went vegan, didn't work, chose carnivore, worked beautifully. I tried vegan, carnivore, keto, and then finally came to this thing which was an omnivore thing which works really well for a lot of my. So unless you test yourself what works for your own body, you wouldn't know what works really for you.
I absolutely agree about the testing part.
Yeah.
Like everything should be tested. It should be completely like there should be experiments done on yourself.
Yeah.
And you need to like constantly gauge everything,
and
every metric.
prioritizing their health by making a choice of food that they enjoy eating and they can sustainably eat, and it keeps them or their children or their family healthy. Saying that it is cruel because you could have made a choice to eat like tofu, tempeh, or soy isolate, I don't think that's practical. At least that's my take.
Okay.
So I just wanted to add to his point because you're saying that an individual can be healthy in a non-vegan diet, an individual can be healthy in a vegan diet. Same way, the individual can also be a kid. A kid can be healthy in a plant-based diet. And the whole point, again, I'm coming back to the same point, which India lack knowledge and India doesn't have the accessibility. And India is not, we are nothing compared to the West. What he said was a very wonderful point. We cannot compare to the research and everything that comes from the West. But the thing is, India is moving towards that. We are becoming the largest exporter of beef. The entire thing is increasing. So before going that, why don't we stop it? Is our thing. We can do the same thing in a more compassionate way. And
we export because we don't eat it.
Exactly.
No, we
that's
are
a very
not killing.
cherry
Yeah,
pick
Very
data.
important point, because
Yeah.
we have 1/3 of the world's cattle, and we simply do not consume anywhere close to the per capita consumption of meat, even to the global average. Americans consume 10 times more.
Or legally we are restricted.
yeah,
So which
I
is fine,
agree.
which
But
is
why
fine.
is the beef the life right now? The slaughter is completely banned in India for cows. Okay,
No.
beef. Yeah,
no.
it is happening. It is happening.
In some places,
Yeah,
it's
the government is saying what we are slaughtering is not do.
Hold on, the south and the east.
South India doesn't matter. नहीं अभी इंडिया के पब्लिक के लिए
And काफी सारा हमारा cattle is buffalo. Buffalo का slaughter band है भी नहीं ऐसे भी कहीं.
But yeah, the whole point of activists and everyone we are talking about is because India is growing. We are the largest producer consumer of milk, and we are also becoming the largest exporter of beef. And everything is increasing and everything is becoming modern and scientific. Obviously, it's nothing as big as compared to the West, but we are getting there. So why not we stop it before we get there is our whole point. And we can get there because India is, I believe, as a culture, a lot of people follow us. And I guess Indians, and that way can be a great example to the entire world.
Which is part of the reason why a lot of the vegan chefs that I follow them because they give people ideas. They give people suggestions that, hey, you know what, we could do this. And in doing that, they are perhaps making someone cook a vegan, a plant-heavy meal instead of an animal-heavy meal. And net has that positive impact, right? Where I have a disagreement is bringing the shame and the cruelty and the kindness. I don't think that really works, right? You give people options, and then it'll over time, at least the privileged people will be able to absolutely make the right choices where necessary. Down to zero, probably not, but less is, a little bit change is better than nothing at India's scale. But again, it has to come from the point of view where India is still mostly nutritionally deficient in so many things. So for sure, I really think animal protein consumption will go up before it starts to stabilize, right? And for sure, I agree with you. Your activism will help people discover those choices before it kind of becomes, we should not become like the West. I absolutely agree with that.
To just briefly add to his point, I think the ethics of animal abuse, it never existed before this large-scale urbanization. Before this, there was no large-scale insemination of buffaloes. It never happened. Like this happened after large-scale urbanization where we couldn't feed anyone. And I think that is a problem that we all are facing. As vegans, we are facing that. As carnivores, we are facing that. Like every spectrum, we're facing the same thing. And I mean, I'm with you. I'm absolutely, all of us would agree that farming animals and insemination of cows, abuse, I'm totally against that. 100% I'm against that. But I'm also against monocrop agriculture. Absolutely against that. Like you're killing the topsoil. We are changing the whole environment and we are changing the whole ecosystem. And that is also not going to end well in 100 years. It's the same thing.
We're probably not going to be here in 100 years. Our species will not be here.
No, I think we will because we've survived and we've
I'll be there. I'll live till 112.
I'll upload my.
No,
my
I really think like see,
Samar.
the best way to approach this is always use your own body as your reference and your guide and your philosopher and your mentor because you live in that. So often we all want like to create societal change and we want everyone to adopt a certain thing. We can't do that because if my body is designed in a certain way and certain experiments prove that to me, then I choose that knowledge from my body and educating other people about the right choices. We've spoken about veganism for so long. None of us even spoke about like what happens with conventional agriculture. Like you could be plant-based, but you could be eating glyphosate and so many other pesticides and that could be messing up your health.
True.
Or a samosa is a vegan food. Vada pav is vegan. I've had people who are saying I'm vegan and then they're choosing vada pavs and samosas and chips.
Yeah.
No way going to contribute to your health. So beyond that debate of ideologically is this the right thing to do, like understand food is supposed to nourish your body, food is supposed to repair and rejuvenate and heal your body so that you can do amazing things with your mind.
Yeah.
We are not a species meant to just go and hunt and forage and like wake up and sleep just thinking about food. We are a species designed to evolve. We are a transitional species because if you look at how the human mind has evolved even in the last 100 years, there is no other species on this planet that evolved like this. And there has to be a reason why nature has kept us alive. You said like we fucked up this planet. Why hasn't nature just chosen to annihilate the species and let us be? Because we are participating in something beyond our understanding currently. We are part of a larger spiritual process where through our spiritualization, we bring in more of the light. Conversations around compassion only come when you start seeing the universal layout, like you're part of a larger whole. If you can choose that, like you have evidently, if you can choose that and really maintain health, great. I couldn't, he couldn't, many of us can't. So as long as you keep it there, like I would rather not kill and I would eat if I could just live off on light, love and light, I really would do. I really would do that. I go ground myself. I go sit in the sun. I really do that so that I can harness more electrons from sun.
Give hugs to trees.
I really do that. I really get electrons from nature as much as I can. But there is a need for protein which my body doesn't seem to adapt. There's a need for iron which my body can't get from supplements.
Yeah.
So then I choose this with full consciousness, with no regrets, with no guilt, with no shame. And I think if we leave it at that every human is free to choose. Yes, there is choice, but every human is free to choose without judgment, without shame. I think we would then focus on solving problems like industrial farming, which he said like is like the worst thing. Like abuse is the worst thing. Like don't do it like that.
Less meat is a better goal than no meat. I think is like a easy
For some people,
on
yes.
the long run,
Yeah.
on the long run. Cumulatively.
Yeah.
Again, individual, I'm completely with him, right? If his happiness and his health is dependent on eating only meat, I think that's what he should do, right? And the important thing that you mentioned there, which is that beyond our individual right to choose, we must also recognize that the vast majority of people do not have the bandwidth or the privilege to choose, right? And it's a very, it's not even a binary thing, right? I mean, just maybe even just one economic ladder below us. People don't have the time, they have to work 12 hours and they're sitting and thinking about these considerations and so on. They're worried about, way too many other things. And I think that is probably should drive our thought process towards net, right? There are many things we want to optimize. Surely number zero has to be reduce human suffering. Make sure we don't have stunted children. Make sure that they are all growing up to the fullest of their potential. They're not iodine deficient. They're not B12 deficient, D deficient, and so on. And then once you have done that, and in my opinion, that use every tool you have at hand. And after that, if you can do that with sustainable plant-based sources, nothing like it. Because for sure, there is no doubt that it is better for the planet. It is overarching. All data, right, generally shows for the vast majority of the population, more plants, more fruits and more vegetables they consume, more whole foods, plants they consume, grains they consume, the better, right? So there is no argument over that. But it has to be first superseded by the fact that individuals have to be healthy, they have to be happy, they have to be fed.
So guys, just to wrap up this conversation, we'll just go around and everyone, if you just want to share like your final thoughts, I think that's the best way to do it. But obviously we've talked about so many different topics, so it's hard to keep track. But Kuntal, would you like to start? We'll go down this way.
So I'll just start by sharing a personal experience about a piece of content I created, which was on you, by the way.
Oh, we didn't know this. Where was this until now?
I didn't.
I had no idea that Masala Lab ever existed until someone sent me a snippet and someone started tagging me and someone started sending me where you said that I have to acknowledge that I did a little bit of clipping.
That's social media, right? I don't take anything on social media seriously.
But yes,
it's all about clickbait and it's fair.
But you mentioned a point about veganism where you were still very, you were plant forward, but you said that veganism is expensive, whatever. And I created a kind of a piece on it. So, but after that, I looked a lot more into your content and actually it was pretty good. I think, I learned quite a bit from your content. So, want to acknowledge that here, and I'm glad that this is not like a parliament where we are it's taking like there were some disagreements, and I will definitely send the studies that I have promised to send. And you said that you will live till 112. Hopefully I will also live and we'll go climb Everest together back.
Blood test
Every 6 months or 3 months.
We'll just check, whose SpO2 is, a little better.
Yeah, that's a good measure.
Resting heart rate. Whose resting heart rate is lesser?
They were determining which of you has better genes. Not proving anything.
But that said, I do agree with some of your points where you mentioned that we need to take care of our population, especially at a level where we don't have stunted children, we don't have, some of these deficiencies. But I do think
with innovation and with technology, these can be addressed using plant sources for sure. I think everything, including vitamin B12, including vitamin D3, including iodine. Iodine anyways shouldn't be a problem with, given that iodized salt is so, prevalent across the board. Like, we literally have people giving polio drops all across the country. Like, it's been such an amazing experiment, right? So it's not that it is not doable, where we cannot get to even the poorest of poor and give them the right things so that they can address their deficiencies. And I disagree that supplements are bad. I disagree that, everything supplement is artificial and that is not good for you. I think that is a appeal to nature fallacy, and I do not agree with that. So I think that is, another point I wanted to make. But I feel I am in agreement with you that if we can fix some of these things using some technology, innovation, and by getting out, I think eating protein is important. I don't think that, hey, it has to be animal protein. Yes, given our current situation of the country today, and as you mentioned, right, whatever is accessible, easily available, right? If the chickens are roaming around in the farm, it is accessible. Instead of me saying tofu khao, like, who in the village is going to be able to eat tofu? Nahi hai, tofu available hi nahi hai, right? Maybe tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities ke kirana stores mein tofu mil raha hai, and maybe sab log ko nahi bhi khana hai, right? But so anyway, I feel agar innovation hoga, like for example, there could be future where we could have lab-based meat. I honestly think that at a molecule level, lab-based meat is exactly equal to, what the meat that you have, there. So I feel agar it's long ways away, like long ways away. So I'm not saying, anytime in near future that's going to happen. But, like whatever innovations can come, precision fermentation, all of these innovations where we can get in plant-focused products, plant-forward products, and make it accessible to the masses.
And affordable, yeah.
And affordable. I feel that is the way forward, because I truly still believe that animals are sentient and emotional beings. They are like us. They feel pain, they feel suffering, they feel everything. And if we can, yes, we want to save human lives, because, the goal here is to reduce the amount of suffering, right? Because we had also brought the point of plant agriculture and how much, it destroys. But you also have to understand, even if it's grass-fed, a lot of this agriculture, a lot of this produce is still being eaten by the animals that we are eating eventually, right? So if
Not in India.
even grass-fed still. So if you want to reduce your level of like the harm that you are causing, I feel having a more plant-based plate is the way to go forward. And yeah, I mean, that's what I would have, to be very honest. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I think from my end, just hearing everyone's amazing views, thank you for sharing. I agree with you on many points around the data we need to look at more strongly in India and have more clarity around that, especially when we are having contextual conversations about India. Definitely agree with you there. I think for me, I agree with Kuntal that protein is protein. For me, it's not a matter is it animal protein or plant protein. At the end of the day, we need to look at the nutrients for what they are. And if we can get those nutrients from plant-based sources, then that is great. And for me, then it just comes down to merely an ethical conversation. And you were saying about that it's a personal choice. And I completely agree with you. But in my moral book, a personal choice doesn't include a victim. So I think that's where a personal choice affects me. It's like if I believe that there is a spaghetti monster that rules the earth, that is my personal choice. But if I am killing someone, then it's not, to me, a personal choice. In the same way, a pedophile will be like, oh, I can rape a child. Where do you draw the line with morality when we start talking about personal choice? And I think that's a very interesting moral dimension conversation as well. And I don't want to digress. So anyway, I just want to thank everyone for your contributions. I think I agree you can be healthy on a non-vegan diet as well, and you can be healthy on a vegan diet. I think it just comes down to, for me, if you have a choice, then try and opt for a more compassionate option where possible, if you can.
Yeah, so my message is like everything can be done in a compassionate way, so why not do it? Because my story was the worst. If anybody would have been there, I guess they would have quit veganism. They quit. I mean, I met with an accident, and on the spot, my tibia, fibula both broke, and all my nerves were busted. It's here. If it can go on
Oh
camera.
my God.
Oh my
I
God,
almost lost my leg. Okay. Yeah. So this is called compartment syndrome, and all the nerves were broken. There is no guarantee that the leg will be saved. What they do is they just keep the nerves and they just close it. अगर लग गया तो नसीब, भगवान भरोसे. The operation भी वैसे ही होता है. And then none of my family members were near, and I was crying in pain. I was in so much pain. I was screaming. And doctor is coming and he is telling me like, अरे ये तो पेन होना ही नहीं चाहिए, नम हो जाता है फ्रैक्चर में, तो आपको तो पेन ही नहीं होना चाहिए. बट आई वाज क्राइंग एंड माय सीईओ केम, ही इज लाइक, ही इज आवर बेस्ट ट्रेनर, पॉसिबली नहीं है, कुछ तो गड़बड़ है, आप सब चेक करो. एंड दे इमीडिएटली स्टार्टेड चेकिंग रेडियोलॉजी, एमआरआई सब किया, एंड दे फिगर्ड आउट दैट all the nerves are broken. They immediately arranged a neurology team and everything. And that day was June 17th, 2019, National Doctor Day strike. No doctors were available. I was lying on the road for 45 minutes crying in pain. And then I went to the emergency room. I was screaming. Doctor said, you have to do something for him. And they gave me all the painkillers, the max limit. But I was still screaming. I said, and I swear, I prayed that I wanted to die, because I couldn't handle the pain. And then I went into the room and they got surgery. Till 2 days, I couldn't feel my leg. And after the third day, I saw a small sensation in my thumb. I was like, wow. And doctor said, tu bach gaya, tera pair bach gaya. So this is 90% of the case. It is pure luck. 90% of the case, the leg is amputated. And if it is not amputated at the right time, the life goes. मेरा leg भी ampute नहीं हुआ. I also got saved and my leg also got saved. Now the whole point was, the entire people who were seeing this journey, they said इसकी bodybuilding journey खत्म. And I was obviously shifted to my ward, and from the ward boy to a pune or the nurse who is coming to clean me, because I'm bedridden. I'm fucking doing potty, urine, everything on the bed. I can't move. They are moving myself, cleaning me up and everything. From everyone who had come up, they had to tell me one single thing, कि यार तू ये क्या खा रहा है? Because I was not eating meat, so they're like, यार ये तू खाएगा ना, तू तो ऐसे ही पड़ा रहेगा, तू रिकवरी ही नहीं होएगा, ऐसे बोले. फिर 1 week हुआ, I was discharged to home, and cutting it short, after 3 months, doctor saw me and he was like, dude, what did you do? Because I recovered so fast. I was on a whole food plant-based diet. That is the time I tried whole food plant-based diet for 7 months, and I recovered so fast. So the whole basic point was, उन्होंने भी orthopedists also agreed that when animal products went inside very less, because the inflammation was so much. When animal products were fully eliminated, the recovery was very high. So my message is, if I can recover from this, and the worst case can be recovered from a plant-based diet, everything can be. And if you're talking about building muscle, then it's here. So it's not only about muscle. So people look at me like, yaar, ye to vegan bodybuilder hai. But people don't know about the story that I've been through. I almost died. I prayed. I wanted to die. The amount of pain. And when I was in that hospital bed, you are insane. People came to me and they're like, cow ka tail ka soup piyega na, अरे क्या insane recovery होगा. Then you take a lamb soup. But मैंने उनको ये, my caretaker was there 24/7. I had a caretaker and he's like, Abhishek sir, आप ले लो ना lamb soup. मैंने बोला तेरा पैर तोड़ा तो जैसा ही लगेगा. मेरे को कितना दर्द था मुझे पता. The amount of pain that I was in the ward, I know, because just for me killing that same animal and going through that pain, for me it is a very selfish reason. For that reason I didn't touch. My recovery happened in around 9 months. In 3 months I was deadlifting 100 kgs in 3 months with a rod and 3 screws inside in 9 months. And my orthopedicians were 65 years of age. And they told me that time Game Changers had released, and they told me, and they passed the comment that we are witnessing game changers in our entire in the front in our life, and we would never suggest me to anyone. They were orthopedicians. They did their masters from London. So I believe that being an example, and I am being an example, that is what I would like to say. Everything is possible in a compassionate way if you choose to do it. Thank you.
It's a lovely story, and I'm glad you're alive and you didn't die. Like, I think that's something we can all agree on. And see, I come back to the same point that I've maintained from the beginning that it's a bio-individual decision. Every human has free will. While you said like as long as choice doesn't have a victim, make sure you're not the victim of your choice. Like if you are choosing an ideology over your own self-existence and your own survival and even thriving, then you are becoming the victim of that choice. And also pedophilia cannot be compared to this. Like don't even bring that into the...
That's a separate thing.
Yeah, that's, I mean, the moral compass on that is so far out somewhere, cannot be brought into this conversation. So I've had debates with people, and I often see the tendency to bring extremely emotionally triggering comparisons and commentaries from the vegan players in the field, which is unfair. Just not right to bring that, which is so horribly nasty, where a child lives with trauma of something that an adult chose for the rest of their life, versus an animal receiving a clean-cut blow so that the meat can be used for someone else's survival. It's very, very different. So don't.
Most people, it's not their survival though, it is their choice. They're doing it out of taste and convenience.
Because unless they choose that, they would be the victim of their choice. So I'm just leaving it there.
Yeah.
This side would never agree with this side. Like I've seen that for the last 4 years since I got out of being a vegan. I was on this side for 2 years. But it is a bio-individual choice, and you choose food to ensure it serves your body to repair, rejuvenate, heal without guilt and shame of your choices, and feel the consequences. You could choose to eat chips all day and then see the consequences of that, but you get to choose that.
I would just love to live in a world where I
Yeah.
can eat chips all day. That would
Yeah, my world would be like sourdough. If I could just eat sourdough bread all day, I'd be like the happiest person. But I can't eat gluten. But I can't tell everyone. I can't. It messes my thyroid. It messes my gut. So yeah. So I'm there. Like
I would go exquisite. For me, it would be tandoori chicken momos.
For me, to be a pizza.
oh.
I really enjoyed the conversation. I think it's again a classic demonstration of the fact that adult human beings can have entirely polar or opposite points and have a civil conversation in a way that we simply cannot on social media. I think on social media,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I think we would be shouting at each other, snarky comments,
Yeah.
passive aggressive stories, right? And I'd sort of take the worst caricature
Yeah.
of the morally superior vegan and make a content about it, and like he will then edit that very specifically to pick one thing that I said wrong, and that's just the vicious cycle of how I think discourse around ideas happens. The truth of the matter is that food is death. The fundamental definition of food is death. One organism has to kill and eat another organism. One kind of cell has to literally destroy the cell wall and break down every little mitochondria, lysosome, everything inside a cell down to the DNA and ingest it. That's the fundamental single cell definition of food, and we are all multicellular organisms that basically have done that in some shape or form, right? I mean, we are obviously advanced primate apes with the capacity to think, with the capacity to think about future consequences, with the capacity to define abstract terms like compassion in ways that other animals do not. Right? The very animals that we often say are deserving of compassion, most of those animals by themselves do not have these kind of notions. I mean, there's no evidence that they do. At the same time, I think what is sort of important is that all food is death. And we all, culturally over the last 6,000 years, we've all drawn the line at varying parts, at various places, right? So in some parts of the world, like the Middle East, there is a line drawn around pork, saying this is haram, and so on, right? And there is a line drawn in somewhere around another part of the Middle East that you should only eat the hind parts, and so that's the kosher sort of definitions. And in this part of the world, that we should not eat the cow, and in some other parts of the world, some other things are not eaten, and so on, right? And over time, these are cultural kind of decisions. And I think we have to see these food preferences that we have, including these morally ambiguous definitions of compassion, right? For you, what you see, your experiences in life, your experiences of seeing animals being treated that way, you have a viscerally natural and something intuitive definition of compassion that's very intuitive to you. It is not intuitive to others. And I think being able to have the empathy to accept that other people perhaps are compassionate in other areas. They prioritize other kinds of compassion. Food is not an area they prioritize them. And for them, a domesticated animal that was literally a product of human domestication over the last 5,000-6,000 years, animals that cannot survive in the wild, animals that, what would you do? If you just stop eating, they would still multiply, you would still have all of your carbon sustainability in every single one of those problems, but you would satisfy that one arbitrary notion of, oh, I'm being compassionate by not killing this particular category of animals, right? And again, I don't even want to get into the fact that, shrimp and fish and other animals and insects and other things, they are not built the same way a cow or a goat or a chicken might be, and so on. But the important point is that it is first important to prioritize humanity, meaning that if I'm in India, and if I know that 80% of people are not getting enough protein, 50% are like B12 deficient, 50% are like anemic, and so on. And there is no serious science at this point and economics that suggests that you can fix this problem right now with plant-based food. And in that kind of a world, I don't think pushing the compassion as a priority over that collective humanity goal is the right thing, right? And the second point, beyond that, individually, if you are happy and if your life, your job, your stresses, your priorities mean that this is the food you like eating, this is your comfort food, right? I don't think saying that you have a choice, it makes sense. Not everyone has a choice. Perhaps the most privileged people have a choice, but it's a spectrum, right? So, but from my point of view, what I particularly every single day learn from the vegan chefs that I follow is that every single day that the level of innovation, the level of culinary creativity, right? Because my primary interest is actually culinary rather than food and health. Is that you discover the amazing things mushrooms can do. You discover the astonishing kinds of textures that you can get with modern day techniques with plants. And I, in that sense, I think we all enrich the food world rather than just fight with each other, right? You don't have to eat meat, but in a sense, I would also encourage, in some sense, people who do eat meat to really discover how to make vegan food, because it's some really astonishingly delicious things that you can eat. And in doing so, if that reduces your per capita consumption of meat, that I think is good for the planet, right? So at least that's my opinion. All right.
Last but not least.
Right, that is very beautifully taken. I would just like to summarize it in a way like this topic has been less about nutrition and more about ethics for me. And to decide about that, I literally had to scout through a lot of ancient spiritual teachers and to really get an idea like what truly the nature of spirituality and ethics is. And for me, as much as I can understand, it is living in the now and living very spontaneously so that like your mind can't make ideologies out of things which cannot hold on for 10 years, 50 years down the line. So what I believe is look at the entirety of the evidence. Food for me is curiosity to know more about what particular substance does to my body and and how we evolved eating and how we actually can 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 affect things can affect maybe can change the evolutionary cycle that we are in. Like if it happens that tomorrow vegan diets make us more stronger, more better to survive on this planet, I'm 100% for it. I tried it for that only. And with that, what happens is we miss sometimes that the whole entirety of the evidence doesn't point exactly to one simple thing. It never is just single causal, it's multi-causal. There are a lot of things. So like when I started, I was thinking, carnivores is everything. And then I realized somewhat down the line that, like carnivores also sometimes they like the tribes, they sometimes also have honey. Like they would have fruits when they would get their hands on it. Maybe it would be like their way of having a cheat meal, but like they do have it. So for me, it is like, people call that I'm an hardcore. This is a hardcore ideology, but I don't think it is. And like moving back to the first part of the debate, like you said, Paul changed. Beautiful. Paul should have changed. As soon as he found out like this is not working, he should have changed. And I would admire anyone who changes. Anyone who changes, and it could be because of personal situations. Like you see someone dying, you see an animal dying, and you feel for it. For me, 100%. Stop eating meat, stop being a carnivore, whatever it is, stop doing it completely. And if the opposite is true, you're not able to cure your autoimmune diseases, you're not able to move properly because of maybe arthritis that is not healing, I think you should just be open to trying. For me, it's that. For me, it's like the amalgamation of two different worlds and really being true to your inner self without the mind. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone. Really
Thank you.
appreciate everyone taking the time and having, I think, a very respectful conversation.
Yes.
Very, very different views.
No name calling.
No name calling. That's pretty impressive. I'm really impressed.
Where are the gloves?
Maybe next time. Next time. Well, thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
guys.
Amy. Thanks for hosting all of us and like to think of doing
Yeah,
this
beautiful idea.
Pleasure.
despite the risks involved.